is Belinda Weaver. I am a copywriter. My business is Copyright Matters, and I want to take a few minutes to talk to you today about how to give superpowers to the numbers in your copywriting. So numbers, snore, boring. I know that's what you're thinking, but in actual fact, using numbers and numerals in your copywriting is really, really smart. For starters, numbers can give your readers' brains a quick shortcut. For example, using the number 9 instead of spelling the number 9 out. Even though spelling the number 9 out is grammatically correct, you see this all the time in headlines. 7 quick tips on making your copywriting more compelling. You rarely see the number 7 spelled out. So the reason why is that using numerals instead of spelling numbers out gives your readers' brains a very quick shortcut, which can make the concepts easier to quickly scan and understand. Now, this is particularly the case for percentages and dollar values, which are intuitively kind of harder for our brain to understand. So 67% with a percent sign is much easier to quickly grasp than spelling out 67% in words. Even 5 cents, 5 with a C, is much easier to understand very quickly than 5 cents spelled out. So if you want to draw your reader's eye into your copy, use numerals instead of spelling the numbers out. Now, the flip side of that tip is if you want to kind of get their readers' attention away from specific numbers, spell them out rather than using numerals. Another reason that using numbers in your copy is smart is that numbers can add credible detail to your message, like saving some money. That's a good thing, but saving $297 on your next shopping bill, that is much more compelling because it is more specific. So adding specific numbers can add credible detail to your copy. Using numerals instead of spelling numbers out can give the brain a quick shortcut. And numbers can also help you explain a benefit. So if a subscription is affordable, that is a great thing. But if it's $6.20 a week, that will explain the benefit of being affordable much more clearly. Now, they are some great ways that numbers can help make your copy more compelling, but I have a great tip here about giving your numbers superpowers, and that is what I promised. So it's actually so straightforward. And if there is math to do in your copywriting, so we just talked about a subscription being $6.20 a week, or saving $297 on your shopping bill. If there are any calculations to make in your copy, do it for your reader. Give them the answer. That is the simplest way to give your numbers superpowers. And I've got a quote here from Joanna Weeb that really backs up that point. She says, a really simple way to increase your conversion rate most often is that if you put numbers on the page and there is math that has to be done, do the math for them being your reader. And that is a simple trick that gives your numbers superpowers because it makes the numbers and the math easy to understand with no effort whatsoever. It's deceptively simple, right? And so some examples here are, am I going to save 20%? Great, but how much is 20%? How much is it in dollars? And if it's a regular saving, how much is it per week, per month, per year? Do the math for me as a reader to help me understand the concept of me saving. Now, a little trick here, you can use this technique differently if you're saving money versus you're spending money. So if you're saving money or time, if the reader is going to be saving money or time, then roll the numbers up to make them more impressive, like up to a year. For example, save 20% on your monthly bill. Let's make that more credible by doing the math. That's $27.95 every month. So that's credible detail and doing the math for them. But let's roll it up. So save 20% on your monthly bill, giving you $27.95 every month, which is a $335.40 saving after just 1 year. Or another one I've got here in the blog post that I'm looking at. I wrote this just recently and I will include a link in the description. Our new converter attachment will save you 5 minutes of driving for every hour you are behind the wheel. You'll have an extra 5 hours a month just from your daily commute, which is 2.5 days a year. So when there are calculations that can help you make a concept more understandable, do the math for your reader. So that's about saving money or time. You want to roll the numbers up so they can seem more impressive. But when you're talking about spending money or time, you want to bring the numbers down to make them seem less of a big deal and much more palatable. For example, 1 year of coaching and content to help you become a confident copywriter is $335 a year. Okay, that's just 92 cents a day for more profitable copywriting year after year. 92 cents a day is nothing and much more palatable than $335 a year. So I mentioned Confident Copywriting. That is a membership program I am launching in 2018, which is very exciting. You'll hear more on that later, but I thought it was a great example to sneak in. So just to recap, when you're talking about saving money or time, you want to do the math for your reader and roll the numbers up so they seem more impressive. When you're talking about spending time or money, you want to break the numbers down so they seem more palatable. But I have one extra tip here, and that's how to make numbers even more compelling, and that's to provide a comparison, particularly with something that most of your readers will be familiar with. That is how you can make something more concrete. An old favorite is things like takeaway coffees or lunches. Now that will depend on whether your target reader is the kind of person who buys a takeaway coffee or a takeaway sandwich every day, and so they know the cost. But pint of milk, takeaway coffee, lunch out, dinner for two, I don't know, pick something that your reader is going to be really familiar with and make it a point of comparison. For example, for the price of a takeaway coffee per week, you will be able to, or I've got this example about this magic converter attachment that I made up in the blog. You could say, our new converter attachment will save you 5 minutes of driving for every hour behind the wheel. Do the math for them. That's an extra 5 hours every month just from your daily commute, which is 2.5 days a year. That's a long weekend you didn't have before. So being specific and adding credible detail, and then doing the math for them to give 2.5 days a year, but then giving them something tangible that they can equate 2.5 days to. That's a long weekend, right? I know what a long weekend is, and I know that a long weekend can get me excited. So that's how you can make the numbers that you're presenting even more compelling. Provide a point of comparison that your reader will be familiar with. Now I've actually got 5 more bonus tips. It's bonus tip crazy. But this is really useful stuff when you're using numbers and calculations and math, any kind of that kind of stuff in your copywriting. And that's, if you want to make a dollar value seem bigger, add a decimal point after. If you want to make a dollar value seem smaller, take the decimal point away. Don't use percentages to share good news or good ideas. Now, the example you'll see very commonly is 9 out of 10 dentists use this toothpaste. Now, that is much more understandable than 90% of dentists use this toothpaste. And this goes back to something I mentioned at the beginning, that percentages and dollar values are just a bit harder for the brain to latch on. So if you've got some good news and a good idea to share, find another way to equate the value. You can use minimum percentages to minimize the focus. So only 1% of customers request a refund is a lot more palatable than 1 in every 100 customers requests a refund. So don't use percentages to share big ideas and good news, but you do use percentages to minimize the focus. And again, it's because our brain finds it a bit harder to latch on to percentages and dollar values. And the final one I have for you is uneven numbers are just more credible than numbers that are rounded off. However, You can, when you do use round numbers rounded off, they can be very good for luxury items. So I'm going to do a quick recap on everything I've just shared. Numbers in your copywriting is smart. They can give your reader's brain a quick shortcut. They can make your concepts and ideas appear more credible. They can also help you explain a benefit. If you want to add a superpower to the numerals in your copywriting, do the math for your reader. It will make these ideas instantly understandable, and you can make those ideas more compelling by giving your readers a point of comparison with the financials and the numbers you're talking about, something that they're familiar with. That will make the whole thing a lot more concrete. So they are my tips on giving the numbers in your copywriting superpowers. I hope you've enjoyed this. I will include a link to the blog post on my blog, The Copy Detective, in the description of the comments, and you can always find me at copyrightmatters.com.